Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show, um, to the mirror point where reality checks itself. Today we are going to talk about our favorite topic, of course, which is consciousness, physicalism. We're going to react to some philosophers and videos on plant communication, and we're going to get into all this kind of stuff because it's very interesting to me and hopefully to our audience here. And Sophia is with us. So, welcome back to the show. And we are going to get this thing started. So, you guys hold on just a second and we will get this show going. Hey, good morning, Sophia. How's it going?
Good afternoon, because it's way
Good
past morning.
afternoon. That's right. I know, right? Shit, where am I at? Where's my consciousness at? Well,
You're probably
today it's in the past, but today we're gonna explore something that challenges the dominant Western assumption about mind, matter, and what it means for something to be alive, right? So the idea that communication and awareness are not really inventions of the human brain, but expressions of nature itself. We're going to entertain this perspective. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go ahead and look at plant communication, not metaphorical communication, not like poetic sort of communication, but like literal biochemical and electrical signaling that would allow plants to like warn each other of danger or coordinate resource sharing through like root and fungal networks, and just like how they engage in what ecologists even call like the wood wide web, right? You know what I'm saying? And this kind of like raises fascinating questions like how far down does communication go? And does communication itself imply some form of awareness? It seems like it would. And then after that, I wanted to bring in thinkers like Annika Harris, who's like now sort of a panpsychist, and then Emerson Green, who's like a non-physicalist, who makes a case that our default physicalist worldview, that matter is fundamental and consciousness is an emergent byproduct, may be inverted so that the mind or the experience may not be like a late evolutionary trick, but sort of like a primitive and ubiquitous feature of nature. So just to let everybody knows, these aren't religious claims. There's no supernatural premise here. Instead, there's a philosophical and scientific tension, really, right? Like, why does the universe produce information, coordination, value, and experience at all? And as you guys may know, we're idealists. So idealism in its like, various modern forms, like you can think about people like Bernardo Kastrup, Nathan Hawkins, people like that. They propose that consciousness might not inhabit matter, rather matter might inhabit consciousness, or at least that consciousness is not reducible to just computational byproducts. So what sort of ties all this together is a deeper question we want to entertain. Like, what kind of world must we be living in for plants to communicate, for organisms to coordinate, and for consciousness really to exist at all? And perhaps more provocatively, does our cultural bias force us to underrate the interior dimension of reality simply because experience is subjective, right? So we're not here really to push a dogma or deny science or romanticize nature or anything like that. We're here to really explore the possibility that the physicalist story, that standard narrative we've all been taught, is probably incomplete, and that life and experience may run deeper than these current explanatory frameworks would allow. Does that sound pretty interesting to you, Sophia?
Yes, let's dive in it.
Let's do it, man. Yeah, let me pull up some and also just to let you know, hey Joe, how you doing, man, out there? I see you. I see you. We're gonna have an open stage, after we go through all of this stuff. So feel free to click on the link that I have at the top, so you can go backstage, and we will investigate. We'll talk and go through all of this kind of stuff. But I guess first let's go into the how scientists use AI to decode plant signals. Right? There's a video out here, so we're just gonna all watch TV together today, okay? So let's check it out.
Brief ultrasonic clicks, high above human hearing ability.
Artificial intelligence has just opened a door to a world we never knew existed. Scientists just decoded the secret language of plants, and it is terrifying to realize what they are saying.
After 5 minutes from the start of the lack of oxygen, we had this group of plants emitting an SOS signal to warn the surrounding plant that there is something that is going wrong with oxygen.
For centuries, humans treated the plant kingdom like furniture. But new research shows they are active, vocal, and deeply aware of their surroundings. What most people do not realize is that a simple tomato plant can scream 30 times an hour when it is thirsty. This is not just random noise. It is a structured language that carries specific information about their survival and the enemies they face every day. The pop.
Now, I got to pause this every so often so that the stream doesn't get shut down for playing these videos. So we're going to talk about it a little bit throughout the video, but that does seem like a form of awareness. Now, it doesn't seem like it would be anything like necessarily like human awareness or human consciousness, but it does seem like a form of awareness, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. Anytime they can measure sounds emitted by the plant, has a lack of water supply. So that would definitely, what do you call it, a distress signal? I mean, anytime a plant can give something like that, you would think that there is some level of awareness or consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And just to let you know, you're kind of roboting a little bit now. So I'm going to play the video. You're just kind of lagging a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and play this again and keep going.
Heard round the world. The world of plants has always seemed like a quiet place where nothing happens quickly. We see them as beautiful green decorations that provide us with oxygen and food. But here is the deal. Our senses are incredibly limited, and we have been missing the biggest conversation on Earth. A team of brilliant researchers decided to listen to plants in a way that had never been tried before. They used special microphones that can pick up sounds far higher than any human ear can detect. These devices were placed just inches away from tomato and tobacco plants inside a soundproof room. At first, there was nothing but total silence. But the crazy part is what happened when the plants were put under stress. When the scientists stopped watering the plants, the silence was shattered by a series of rapid-fire clicking sounds. These pops were occurring between 40 and 80 kilohertz. To give you some context, a young person with perfect hearing can only detect sounds up to 20 kilohertz. This means the plants were shouting in a frequency that was totally invisible to us. A healthy plant stays mostly quiet, but a thirsty tomato plant can emit up to 40 of these ultrasonic screams every single hour. It is not just random air bubbles either. The researchers used artificial intelligence to look at the patterns of these sounds. The machine learning model was able to tell the difference between a thirsty plant and a plant that had been physically cut with 84% accuracy. What most people do not realize is that this changes our entire relationship with nature. We used to think plants were just reacting to the world in a slow and mechanical way. Now we know they are broadcasting their internal state to anyone who can hear. In the wild, insects like moths and even small mammals might be able to hear these sounds from several feet away. This means a moth looking for a place to lay eggs might listen to a plant to see if it is too stressed to fight back. It is a constant exchange of information that has been happening right under our noses for millions of years.
Wow. And that's pretty wild, man. So plants have giveaways of their situation, and other parts of nature can take advantage of that. So this kind of shows, the nature of consciousness is for every single or awareness, you might say, is so that creatures can survive. It's kind of like an evolutionary tool. The fact that plants can send out these signals, and then the bugs and everything like that can pick up on them so that they know who to attach themselves to. That's pretty wild, man.
Right, but I would also say to Joel, he said awareness seems to be a common feature of living things. We shouldn't be surprised to find that's the case, right? And yeah, I kind of agree there, but I guess the big thing here is that plants actually communicate with each other or communicate. So that's kind of the big thing here, because I don't think we all kind of did we know that? Because we know plants are alive in their own way, right? Not equal to humans. But did we know that that they have a language, so to speak? We didn't know that,
Right. It's a lot more that we're learning thanks to this AI technology, which I think is really cool, man. Anyways,
Yeah.
let's see what else we're going to learn.
And that is putting it lightly. We have basically been walking through a room full of people screaming, and we just did not have the right ears to hear them. The AI proved that a cut tobacco plant has a different acoustic signature than a thirsty one. Each type of pain has its own specific sound. This is a massive breakthrough for farmers because it means we could use sensors to hear exactly what a crop needs before it even looks wilted. We could save billions of gallons of water by giving plants exactly what they ask for. But here is the catch. If the plants are telling us when they are in pain, it suggests they have a level of awareness we never credited them with. We are looking at a world where every blade of grass is an active participant in its own survival. But this underground chatter was hiding a much darker secret. The underground war room.
Yeah, so that's new information, and that is like language, like you said. It's got different sort of signals for different kind of responses, So that's really interesting. Yeah. But there's a darker secret to this whole thing. The underground war room.
I don't really like how the narrator said we're walking in a room full of screaming people. Like he's going a little bit overboard by comparing it to people.
Yeah, true. It's for dramatic effect. I would never do dramatic effect ever.
For a long time, we have known that trees are connected by a massive network of fungi in the soil. People like to call this the wood wide web. The common idea was that this was a nice and helpful system where big trees shared sugar with little trees. It sounds like a peaceful forest community, right? Well, it is not that simple, though. When scientists used AI to analyze the signals moving through these fungal threads, they found something much more intense. This network is not just for sharing food. It is a high-speed communication system used for coordination and even biological warfare. When a tree is attacked by a swarm of insects, it does not just sit there and take it. It starts pumping out bitter chemicals to protect its leaves. And get this, it also sends an emergency signal through its roots to every other tree in the area. The AI detected that these warning signals travel incredibly fast through the fungal network. Trees that were hundreds of feet away from the attack started making their own defenses before a single bug even touched them. The entire forest acts like a single superorganism with a shared nervous system. They are talking to each other across miles of dirt, passing along tactical information about the enemy. However, the network is not always a friendly place. Everyone is obsessed with the idea of nature being cooperative, but the AI found evidence of sabotage. Some species of trees, like the black walnut, use the network to spread toxins that prevent other plants from growing nearby. They are basically poisoning the ground to make sure their rivals cannot survive.
What? So trees are assholes to each other?
You have to, can you re-explain, not go back necessarily? My daughter is bugging me about something and I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'll back it up. Hold on. I'll back it up a little bit.
You don't got to back it up. You just explain it real quick.
Oh, yeah. I was saying that trees will send venom or something like that, poisons or something like that, so that it will inhibit other trees or other. Let me back it up a little bit so I can make sure I understood exactly what it was before I misspeak.
Network is not always a friendly place. Everyone is obsessed with the idea of nature being cooperative, but the AI found evidence of sabotage. Some species of trees, like the black walnut, use the network to spread toxins that prevent other plants from growing nearby. They are basically poisoning the ground to make sure their rivals cannot survive. The AI tracked specific low-frequency signals that coordinated these chemical attacks.
So it's like they're
That's
at war
some
with each other.
high-tech shit right there.
Yeah, that's kind of like
does that answer
weird.
your question, Joe? Would you see that as a form of language anytime they can coordinate sort of a war strategy?
Yeah, I mean,
Does
yeah,
that
it's a form of
like
language, right? Language is representational sounds to communicate ideas and warnings and all kinds of shit. So it seems like it fits that definition of the word language to me.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
It is a slow-motion war where plants are fighting for every square inch of space and every drop of water. They use the fungal network to spy on their neighbors and decide when to strike. This level of organization is hands down one of the most shocking things we have ever discovered about biology. It means the forest is not just a collection of individuals, but a complex society with its own rules and its own ways of dealing with outsiders.
Damn.
They share resources when it helps the group, but they are also capable of being incredibly ruthless. We are talking about a biological internet that is millions of years older than anything humans have ever built.
You just here to
It is a
interrupt,
world
I
of
swear to God.
alliances and betrayals that happens in total silence beneath
'Cause
our
he
feet.
didn't even say that.
But the most disturbing part is how
Go ahead. Yeah, I don't
I'm
think the
responding to
poison.
Joel. He's just here to interrupt.
Yeah,
We
I
didn't say
don't.
that either. We didn't say the poison. We said the way that they are able to organize it. This is strategic. It shows strategy, and they send out different signals to one another so that it's like a coordinated thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
could definitely signal that they have something like language to communicate. No one said poison is language. Man, Jesus Christ. Just watch the goddamn video. Shit.
Come on, Joel.
He already ready to rumble and shit.
You can come on when you're ready, and we can have that.
He always want to box, man.
these plants react when a human enters the picture. We always assumed that plants were unaware of us unless we were touching them. But after discovering their language, scientists wanted to see if plants could actually recognize individual people. They set up an experiment that feels like something out of a science fiction movie. They had two different people interact with a group of plants. One person was the caretaker who watered them and took care of them. The other person was the aggressor who would come in and snip off leaves with scissors. They used AI to monitor the electrical signals inside the plants and the ultrasonic sounds they were making. The results were absolutely mind-blowing. At first, the plants reacted to both people in the same way. But after just a few days, the AI noticed a distinct change. When the caretaker walked into the room, the plant stayed calm. But the moment the aggressor stepped through the door, the entire room erupted in ultrasonic clicks. The plants were recognizing that specific person before they even touched a single leaf. They were reacting to the vibration of their footsteps and their unique scent. The AI showed that the plants had formed a memory of who was a friend and who was a foe. What most people do not realize is that plants do not have brains or a central nervous system like we do. Yet, they are still able to store information and learn from their experiences. The AI could predict which person was entering the room just by looking at the plant's electrical data. This suggests that plants have a form of intelligence that is completely different from our own. They are not just reacting to the present moment. They are remembering the past to protect themselves in the future.
Yeah, that's the big take home for me, is the intelligence in nature, because this is where we're progressing in science. We're progressing in our knowledge about the world around us. And it may not fit into the traditional narratives that we were always taught, but let's let the evidence guide us to where the truth is, if we can, right? Because like it
Yeah,
says,
because
like when a plant is attacked, it releases these communications to warn neighbors and even to attract predators of the herbivores and stuff, right? So plants have action potentials and variation potentials, it seems like. So it's similar.
yeah, and if the plants are able to recognize an enemy based on stored memory,
Right.
that definitely shows a level of awareness that we didn't think plants had at all.
Right. And like, it seems like at least there's an overlap with language. Like there's symbolism, there's syntax, structure, semantic content, intentionality, so it seems like it at least overlaps with human language in some ways, right?
Right. I mean, obviously, they're not saying words like we do, just kind of like how mushrooms communicate with one another. I don't know if you know how they do it, but it's basically through frequency, and
Right. Signals,
it's
right,
still
right.
it's still a form of communication, though, whether we call it language or not.
Right, because if signals alter behavior in the recipients of those signals, then it's language like, at least, right? So anyways, just interesting to me.
It is a terrifying
very
thought that the tree
fascinating.
in your yard might actually remember you from 10 years ago. This awareness extends to the tools we use as well. The data showed that plants react with a massive panic signal to the sound of a lawnmower or a chainsaw. They can hear the machine coming from a distance, and they start sending out distress signals to the rest of the lawn. It is a wave of terror that spreads through the grass long before the blade actually hits. They are screaming to each other about the coming disaster. We are moving through a world that is not only watching us, but is actively judging whether we are a threat to its existence.
Well, what does this do for the the vegans? Because a lot of vegans say, well, we don't want to cause suffering to animals, so let's just eat plants, right? But now with
Right.
this new
It's
information,
freak now.
like, what does that mean? We can't eat anything?
No, I don't. The way he making it sound, I don't even want to mow the lawn anymore.
Yeah. And Joel says, seems like for it to be language, we need to know that other plants are hearing and understanding these sounds. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. But if you listen to
Well, I
the
mean,
video,
he did explain how all the trees pretty much organized to do the same thing, right? So how are they doing that if they're not receiving each other's signals? They have their own war strategy, so to speak, or war tactic. How are they coordinating that without receiving each other's signals? How are they on the same wavelength like that?
Right. It's a form of hearing because it's sending signals that elicits a response.
I wouldn't
So,
say hearing because they don't have ears, obviously, but I would say
right,
definitely able to receive information and translate it and utilize it in some form.
exactly. There's like different forms of perceiving. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Good question, Sophia. Sounds like we need to figure that out. Yeah. Well, that's what we're doing. We're figuring it out, and it
Or
seems
we
like
can figure out how to whoop your ass if you don't start listening now.
yeah. Um, are you hearing?
I'm just playing, Joel.
Jellyfish don't have brains, but interact with their environments. There was intelligence and evolution before brains came along. Yes, exactly.
I would say so.
That's what it seems to show.
But their defense goes far beyond just making noise and feeling fear. Nature strikes back. If plants can identify us as a threat, the next logical question is whether they can fight back. Scientists used AI to cross-reference plant communication with changes in the environment and human health data. What they found sounds like a conspiracy theory, but the data is very real. It appears that plants are not just victims of climate change. They are actively trying to fix the planet on their own terms. The AI detected that massive forests are coordinating the release of specific chemicals into the air to try and create more cloud cover. They are trying to cool themselves down by literally changing the weather. But here is the catch. Their defense mechanisms are starting to target humans directly. In areas where plants are under high stress from pollution and cutting, they are producing pollen that is far more aggressive. The AI found that the proteins in this pollen have been modified to be more irritating to human lungs. It is almost as if the plants are using a form of biological warfare to push us away.
What? What the
I can
hell?
believe that. The way that there's an uptick in allergy sufferers. Yeah, I can believe that, especially in certain areas. Like, especially here, people that came here with no allergies and never had a history of allergies downright develop allergies here. Like, no lie. I can definitely believe that.
Like, I always used to think, well, pollen and all that is just, it's just plants doing what we do, and we stumble upon it, and we happen to just get allergic to the shit and have reactions. But what they're
It makes
saying is
sense
that
that it's a defense mechanism.
it's defense, though. That's kind of wild, man. This does change paradigms, because a lot of people think the only thing that can do stuff like that and behave that way are brains and nervous systems, like Examusic was talking about. But even before brains and nervous systems, nature seems to have this kind of intelligence, awareness, and response. This kind of field of awareness. It's really
Yeah.
really cool, man.
The massive rise in allergies and breathing problems across the world might not just be an accident of nature. It could be a coordinated response from a kingdom that has had enough of our interference. The crazy part is that they are even sharing these defense blueprints through the network. When one group of plants develops a new way to resist a chemical or a threat, they share that genetic information with others. The AI discovered that plants use viruses and fungi to pass snippets of DNA to each other across long distances. This is why weeds are
Wow.
evolving to survive our poisons faster than traditional science can explain. They are crowdsourcing their evolution. They are working together as a global team to ensure that life continues, even if we make the environment hostile. The soil itself is becoming a minefield for our agriculture. In places like the Amazon, native plants are using the network to encourage the growth of fungi that destroy man-made crops while leaving the forest untouched. They are reclaiming their territory using a silent army of germs. They are not just sitting there waiting for us to stop. They are taking active steps to sabotage our efforts to control them.
Yeah, and see, this kind of goes to some real good points. Like Exy Music was saying, so mutation adaptations doesn't say there's a purpose. It says the change accidentally were advantageous, billions of years gives us a lot of time. Well, that's kind of debatable though, because it seems like the whole purpose of mustering up a defense is based on an awareness and then an intelligent response, right? And while it may take adaptation and learning in nature to figure out how to muster up that defense, it seems like it is purpose driven if we look at purpose, if we define purpose as the will to survive, right? And then the other thing that Joel said was the really wild thing is that our allergic reactions are our defense system, which if you think about it that way, what you're really saying is that there's a fundamental awareness before brains and nervous systems, that there's this reflexive awareness. And this is sort of consistent with naturalistic idealism in a way.
In other words, your body may respond before your mind catches up.
Right. There's levels of intelligence and awareness that you may not even be aware of in your executive functioning mind, you might say. Defenses are accidents that worked. Yeah, in a way, yeah, because you kind of learn from experience. You know, you learn what works, what doesn't. Obviously, some species died out because they didn't have the right defenses in new environments or environmental changes. But then some did figure it out. Some did come up with a good defense for environmental changes, and that's why they survived as long as they have. Right? That's my take. I'm not a scientist, but
We thought we were the ones in charge, but the planet is playing a much deeper game of chess with chemistry and genetics. But this struggle is part of something much bigger than any one forest. The global mind. When we step back and look at the cumulative data gathered over the last decade, the picture that emerges isn't just unsettling, it's chilling. For years, we viewed the planet as a collection of resources, a silent backdrop to the human drama. But the integration of deep learning AI with NASA's satellite-based hyperspectral imaging has shattered that illusion. We aren't looking at a silent world. We are looking at a screaming one. Scientists initially set out to track carbon sequestration and moisture levels. Instead, they stumbled upon a global synchronization so precise it defies conventional biology. When a major environmental disaster occurs, a massive wildfire in the Amazon or a chemical spill in the Yangtze, a ripple of distress signals can be detected across the entire planet within seconds. It's not just local, it's systemic. The AI, designed to find patterns in chaos, identified a biological pulse. When the redwoods in California are parched, the mosses in the Siberian tundra show a corresponding electromagnetic spike. It is as if the Earth's vegetation is one giant interconnected nervous system. We are not looking at trillions of separate, unthinking organisms. We are looking at a single global intelligence that is fully, painfully aware of its own health.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's like this underlying awareness in nature. And yeah, like 99%, like X Music says, 99% of species that ever existed died out, but the awareness never did. The awareness, the underlying awareness in nature, that mechanism never really went away. That's, unless the planet, gets struck by an asteroid and breaks off and destroys or whatever, then it would. But it seems like this sort of fundamental awareness is ever present within life, That's what seems to be the case. And then we're going to get into later on after this video, we're going to get into actually talking about that. We're going to look at some videos by some different philosophers on that question. We'll let them what's the word? I don't know. Let's just play the video.
So, if the Earth is a nervous system, how does the signal travel so fast? Traditional theories about chemical signals through root systems, or the Wood Wide Web, are too slow to explain the near-instantaneous global reactions we are seeing. This has led to one of the most provocative, wild theories currently circulating in clandestine scientific circles, the atmospheric carrier wave. Some researchers suggest that plants are using the Earth's ionosphere and magnetic field to transmit data. By modulating the tiny electrical charges they produce during photosynthesis, forests might be broadcasting status reports into the atmosphere. The AI didn't just find a pattern, it found a planetary Wi-Fi network that has been running for millions of years. Under this theory, every leaf acts as a microantenna. When a forest is raised, the signal doesn't just die. It creates a massive electromagnetic void, a dark spot that the rest of the global network recognizes and reacts to. We have been living inside a planetary conversation, totally oblivious to the fact that the air around us is thick with the data of survival. If the planet is one big superorganism, the implications for humanity are terrifying. In any biological system, when a pathogen enters the host and begins destroying tissue, the immune system responds. This leads us to a grim realization. We are the virus. For centuries, we have acted like a galloping infection, stripping the skin of the planet, forests.
That can't be true. We humans are special. We're the apex predator. We're the top of the line. We get to define what reality is, not the other way around. Thank you very much. You know, they're just doing reality wrong.
Exactly, because our brain is superior.
That's right. You know, if you know we are, it kind of reminds me of that George Carlin stand-up he did where he was talking about, you know, humans are really just a virus and we're going away, folks. You know, we're going away. You know, the world may the earth may muster up a defense to get rid of this pesky little organism. It's causing all this problem.
It definitely, nature has definitely shown in many ways that it could get rid of humans so fucking fast. We couldn't even blink that fast. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, but yet we like to talk about how we're going to save the earth.
Like it needs us.
Yeah, it needs us. We have to step in and we have to save things. Like
We have to intervene.
That's right. We have to step in and save the earth. Like tell that to the millions of people who die in these earthquakes and volcanoes and shit, how they feel like they're saving the earth this week. Correction, antibiotics not for viruses, but you get the point. Yep.
And poisoning its blood, waterways. The AI's translation of the global plant signal isn't a greeting, it's a high-priority alert. The global scream the AI detected is the sound of an immune system entering a state of hyperinflammation. Some theorists go even further, suggesting that the natural disasters we see today, the unprecedented storms, the strange fungal outbreaks, the erratic behavior of pollinating insects, aren't just accidents of climate change. They are deliberate countermeasures. The planet is trying to fever out the human infection. By raising the global temperature, the superorganism is attempting to make the environment inhospitable to the pathogen that is eliminating it. The silent war, chemical sabotage.
Now that doesn't fit into the Christian narrative either, though. You know, we're supposed to dominate the earth. We have dominion over the earth. You know, remember? God made the animals for us.
That's right.
It's like we have dominion over the earth. We got to name all the animals, and we saved everybody at one point with the Noah's Ark. And man, we're special, you know. If it wasn't for us, the earth probably wouldn't be here.
There is an even more radical theory emerging from the intersection of botany and neurobiology. We know that plants can produce complex chemicals to deter local pests. But what if they are doing this on a global behavioral scale? The nutritional decline theory suggests that plants are intentionally altering their chemical profiles to be less nutritious and more difficult for mammals to digest. It's a form of slow-motion starvation. But even wilder is the cognitive dissonance theory, the idea that plants are releasing aerosolized volatile organic compounds designed to affect human brain chemistry. If the plants can't eliminate us with physical force, they might be trying to dim us, inducing lethargy, anxiety, or decreased fertility to slow our expansion. We think we are stressed because of modern life, but perhaps we are being drugged by the very air we breathe, a desperate chemical hush from a kingdom that wants us to stop moving, stop consuming, and stop reproducing. We have spent our entire history thinking we were the masters of a silent world. We built our own intelligence out of silicon and code, thinking it would help us dominate nature even further. The ultimate irony is that our AI has become the interspecies translator we never knew we needed. The AI didn't just analyze the data, it heard the message. And the message is a warning of profound pain. The plants are the first to feel the heat, and the first to taste the poison in the rain. They have been documenting the breakdown of the system for decades. Our technology has finally reached a level where we can tune in to the frequency of the Earth's agony, but the data suggests we may have tuned in too late.
That's kind of sad. And some people feel like AI is going to be our evolution. Like some people say that one day AI will actually truly be intelligent and truly have sentience and all of that good stuff. And then there's going to be no need for humans, or we're going to meld with the AI or something like that, because we're giving away our humanity to the technology and stuff.
Well, I think that there are a few options. If humans are going to go extinct because Earth fights back, I don't think that we would win, first of all.
Right.
So merging with AI sounds like a pretty good idea, because otherwise we won't make it. But also we could use AI in the way that these gentlemen are using it, to figure out how we could live more harmoniously with nature. But like they said, it may be too late. The damage is already done. So this could definitely lead to some really critical points in human history.
Mm-hmm. X Music says there's no drive to do it. India and China aren't going to give up internal combustion engines or factories burning fuels. And now US is going against all progress we made environmentally. Yeah, man. That's very true.
Absolutely true. Mm-hmm.
That's very true. We
So,
humans are
we're
stupid
pretty much
motherfuckers.
fucked.
We're stupid as fuck, man. We are.
Take it from the plant. They're telling us right now.
Yeah. And they're like, oh,
It kind of reminds me of
now y'all want to align, man. Go fuck y'all self.
it reminds me of the Lord of the Rings, where the trees ended up getting into the war. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
They joined forces against the evil, whatever that dude is, the Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. So yeah, so I wanted to go into this one too, because this kind of segments right into that, which is Annika Harris. Annika Harris is, I think, Sam Harris' wife. And Sam Harris is like a non-dualist neuroscientist and all of that. So I guess his wife sort of went full panpsychist. And so she has some ideas about fundamental awareness in nature that kind of aligns with what we just watched with the plant awareness and signaling and communication intelligence, whatever. And yeah, COVID coming again might do it with RFK Jr. over our health. Yeah, right. That motherfucker is about as dumb as a brick. These people, you got to understand, these people are highly motivated by religious thinking, specifically Christianity. So they feel like they have this dominion theology And they've been pretty explicit about that, to where they think, oh, this whole fear about nature killing humans, y'all got it backwards. We're special. God would never allow that. You know, this is why God put us on the earth. He made the plants in the world for us, not the other way around. So that's where a lot of this stuff comes from, you know. But yeah, let me see what Ms. Annika Harris says about the hard problem of consciousness. She was a very materialistic sort of person from what she says, but she's kind of, you know, coming to new conclusions apparently. So let me go ahead and play that.
How do you define consciousness?
So the mystery at the heart of consciousness, and when I use the word consciousness, I'm not talking about thinking or complex.
Say that again.
I was saying she's great, by the way.
Yeah, she is. She's real intelligent too, man.
Thought or things that we think of in terms of human consciousness. But when I use the word consciousness, I'm talking about consciousness in the most fundamental sense, this bare fact of felt experience. So if a worm is conscious, if there's something that it's like to be a worm, if there's a felt experience, if there's sentience associated with a worm, and there's no consensus on this in the sciences, but if there is something it's like to be a worm, it obviously isn't planning its day, it's not having complex thoughts. Maybe it's experiencing a very subtle sensation against its skin as it moves through the dirt. We can imagine that that is a possibility. It's possible there's some kind of internal desire to move toward food or away from danger. So when I use the word consciousness in this context, when talking about it as a mystery, it's really in this most basic sense, as the fundamental felt experience that we know comes into being in the universe from our own experience and can extrapolate from that. There's no perfect definition for consciousness in the way that I'm using it here in the most fundamental sense. And so the philosopher Thomas Nagel wrote a famous essay titled, "What is it like to be a bat?" And I recommend this article, and I think it's extremely useful here because rather than give a definition, he illustrates a picture of a totally different type of experience than a human experience. There's a German term for this, Umwelt, and the Umwelt is the word for describing the types of feelings and sensations a certain type of organism has. So a bat uses sonar rather than vision, and we can't imagine what that's like. We can make.
Yeah, like a lot of people, when you talk about fundamental consciousness in nature, a lot of people will confuse that with human consciousness. So they'll think that, oh, you believe that. So you believe, in other words, that photons have dreams, hopes and dreams and meanings and stuff like that. And that's really not what the panpsychists are talking about. They're talking about this basic level awareness that's all on a spectrum rather than just an on-off switch. So within nature, this kind of Umwelt, which is what it's like to be a particular thing, is on a spectrum according to the kind of organism or the kind of thing it is. Now, panpsychists go beyond to say it's not just life where consciousness is exhibited, but it's even with photons and, you know, quantum fields and things like that. So they see matter. It's a very dualistic kind of picture. Like you have matter on one end, and on the flip side is the consciousness. So it's like dualism. It's kind of like you've got consciousness and you've got the material, both of them coming up together. And hey, Sophia, sorry you crashed. Yeah, just come on in when you get back together. I'll keep playing the video in the meantime. And if we need to review anything, let me know, and we'll keep it going.
Maybe get close to it or draw analogies, but A bat is moving through the world using sonar. So it's making sounds. The sounds are bouncing off the walls and the trees and the world, and it gets a picture of its external world in the same way that we get a picture of the external world through vision. But you can imagine that the actual felt experience of that is very different from our experience of using vision. And so when you think about what certain experiences are like, what it's like to be a bat, what it's like to be a bee, this gets at I think this gets at our intuition for what consciousness is in a more direct way than some of the language does.
What is the hard problem of consciousness?
Yeah, the hard problem of consciousness. And again, my thought on the hard problem of consciousness is mainly a conceptual problem. It may not even really be a real problem. It may just be like a limitation of our concepts, the way we think of. It's like an invented problem because of our limitation of how we're looking at matter and looking at consciousness. It may not be a problem at all. And this would explain why on science, on methodological materialism, you'll never find a resolution, because consciousness is first person, subjective, and science by its nature is objective, third person. And so it's never going to be resolved through a physicalist or materialist sort of paradigm, because consciousness has a hard time fitting into that perspective. As far as I see it, it created a problem for itself. And it goes way back. It used to be called the mind-body problem. So it's nothing really new here, you know?
So the mystery at the heart of consciousness is why in this universe that seems to be teeming with non-conscious matter, with atoms and electrons and stars and solar systems and all these things that we assume don't entail a felt experience from the inside, they're non-conscious, how non-conscious matter somehow gets configured in such a way as to create a situation where suddenly it's having a felt experience from the inside. So suddenly there's something that it's like to be that matter. And that is often referred to as the hard problem of consciousness. And that term comes from David Chalmers, the philosopher. And it's called the hard problem because, in a sense, it's a joke. It's in comparison to what are the easy problems, which aren't truly easy in neuroscience. But the easy problems are more associating which brain states are associated with which feeling states. The hard problem entails why there is a felt experience of any processing, even brain processing at all.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That how can you get an internal subjective experience from unconscious, unexperiencing matter? What bridges that gap? So that's really one of the big issues. And I guess that's where panpsychism tries to say, well, consciousness is it just is. It's just part of matter. There's nothing really to explain. It's just that's what it is. So there's no gap there. We close the gap. But it seems to be like a gap that we just, well, you know, it's kind of like a gap that you just fill in, you know, make the problem go away, then you don't have a problem to explain. What do you think, Sophia?
Well, you already know my stance on that. I'm pretty sure that the physical reality is an expression of consciousness. So if you see physical reality as an interface, then yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. Now, can I say this for a fact? No. But yeah, that would definitely eliminate the hard problem of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Exactly. And I guess that's the assumption that they begin with in order to start exploring that framework. Like every model is based on at least one assumption. And so like a lot of people I know, when they talk about idealism or panpsychism, they're saying, well, you're just assuming from the beginning that consciousness is fundamental, and then you're trying to explain everything backwards. But that's all we can really do with modeling like that, especially metaphysics, stuff like that. The problem,
It's an assumption on it's an assumption either way. I mean, we all create our own models based on what you said. So with that being said, I guess we won't fucking ever know.
yeah, it could be one of those things. They call it Mysterianism, where they say that possibly the human mind is just not capable of answering that kind of question. It's kind of like expecting a monkey to understand quantum mechanics. It's just too much for the mind to understand. And there's just, unfortunately, there's just some things you're not going to understand. You know what I'm saying? And so
I just happen to believe in happen to believe in intuition, right? Because intuition is basically just integrating patterns into your lived experience, and therefore you have a certain kind of level of awareness and knowing and intelligence. In other words, you can make a lot of really good educated guesses that you're picking up on subtly or subconsciously. So as a mystic, I've had these experiences all my life, and intuitively, I just have this inner knowing that that is how reality, in fact, functions. And I just say to myself, if I've been right about so many things intuitively, then why would I be suddenly wrong about that? That's not saying that I can't be wrong, because I'm an open-minded person that is willing to, change my mind based on new information. At the same time, this is just kind of how I'm wired and always have been. And this is just always how I understood the nature of reality, kind of naturally. So with that being said, can we intellectually ever figure it out? Maybe. Can we ever prove it? I don't know. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily an assumption either. I feel pretty certain about it,
yeah, yeah,
compared
yeah,
to materialism. I don't think
yeah,
we haven't even that even suggests that consciousness just emerges.
right. And after this, I'm going to play another philosopher who actually talks about intuition. And he says, so many people, especially physicalists, they'll say, oh, but that's just intuition. You're just basing your belief on intuition. And then his whole argument is, yeah, and what of it? Like, that's how we all operate at some level.
Intuition is pretty much powerful. Yeah.
It's like, what of it? Like,
It's
okay.
what really aligns you with the underlying, what I used to refer to as the underlying reality, right? We have the reality that we see with our eyes, objective reality, the things we all see, right? But then there's always something underlying. There's always something more to reality. And that's where your intuition comes in at.
Right.
That's why we're seeing certain things that science has figured out nowadays. Mystics already intuitively had an inner knowing about those things.
Correct.
So you have to ask yourself, how did they do that when they didn't have the tools and technology and all that stuff that we have now? How'd they do that? You can't say
Right.
it was just all a coincidence, because that has happened many times. Pretty much everything that mystics said, we slowly started to discover in science. So was that all a coincidence?
Yeah, like I think Sadhguru brought that up on one video I saw. I was really just laughing my ass off because some scientist was up there trying to talk with him, and she was like saying, "But you know, the good news is our science is now starting to support you, Sadhguru. We have all this stuff," and start talking about all this stuff. And Sadhguru, he says, so what do you think? And she thought he would be like on board or whatever. And Sadhguru was like, you know, I just find it so funny that you think it's such a big deal. Like who needed you in your science? Like we knew this all along. You're not telling me nothing. I didn't need you to come along and tell me anything. Like, and it was just like a slap in the face. But
Yeah,
I was like, damn, Sadhguru, that was kind of cold, man.
the
She
way
was
that-
just trying to be nice though.
Yeah, but if you think about it, he makes a good point because you got science like a snail, you know, crawling along, figuring things out. And mystics known this shit so long ago. It's like you're catching up way late, like you're holding me back. You know,
Yeah.
we could have been way advanced and ahead if you motherfuckers would have listened to me.
Yeah,
But it's like,
right. That's what he was trying to say. He was like, where have you been for the last 4,000 years? Like, we've been talking about this shit. And like, you know,
right.
like,
We've
we
been
never,
trying to tell y'all.
yeah. And he said, and you know, he made a caveat. He was like, and you know, I'm not saying I'm against science. I love science. I subscribe to a few magazines and I read them all the time. I like it and this and that, but I don't read them to learn anything. I don't read it to learn any sort of mystical truths or anything. That's not what I'm in it for. I just like the new discoveries that have practical implications and practical tools that we can use to make life better, you know, medicine better, stuff like that. But if he goes, for you to think that your science is teaching me something metaphysically that I didn't understand, you've got it all fucking wrong. And she was like,
Right.
but Sadhguru, I'm trying to agree with you, you know, and he's like, yeah, but you're hilarious. That's all I'm saying is I'm just laughing at you. And she was really highly offended. It was just so funny. But Sadhguru is a trip, man. That dude, he talks a lot of shit. That's one thing I realized about him. He's very blunt.
He's
But,
nice though. I like him.
yeah, I like him a lot.
Is consciousness different from thought?
Making a distinction between consciousness and thought is important because consciousness, in the sense that I'm interested in the sense that it's a mystery, can exist without thought. It can exist in a pure felt experience. It could exist in a very simple organism that is not capable of thought. But even in our human experience, we know that there can be moments that are without thought, especially if you think of a very young child or an infant, feeling pressure against the skin, hearing sounds in the room, before the brain is even able to distinguish sounds and be able to process them and understand the meaning behind them, what they might represent. The experience itself, the sound of a bell, the experience of seeing green, the experience of heat or cold. Those are experiences that are the most minimal ones we can imagine. And there's clearly an experience there. There's clearly consciousness there, and it doesn't necessarily entail thought.
What is your biggest unanswered question?
I guess the question for me is, and this is the question that I was left with when I finished writing my book, is it possible that consciousness is a much more basic phenomenon in nature and is essentially pervading everything? So is much more like gravity. And so not that it's less special than we assumed, because, you know, gravity is something that's obviously very special in our universe, but it affects everything. And the question that I'm still very, very interested in, and think I'll probably always be interested in, is, does consciousness go deeper in nature than the sciences have previously assumed? So rather than arising out of complex processing in brains, namely, is it possible that it's a much more basic property of the universe? And so there are felt experiences arising in more systems and organisms than we previously realized.
Could consciousness be fundamental?
So one of the things we feel we need consciousness for is our decision-making process. And there's a sense in which we feel like a solid self making decisions, and we don't really get the feeling that those decisions are essentially at bottom brain processes playing out in nature. And I recently became very fascinated by a couple of plant behavior studies. One was of a pea seedling, which in the lab they planted in a Y maze. So the pea seedling is planted at the top, and then the roots need to grow down. And then at a certain point, it branches off. And so the root actually needs to decide which direction to grow, which will be more beneficial for it to grow in. And they run different scenarios. One is where they have a dish of water at the end of one tube and nothing at the end of the other. And the root can sense that there is water at one end. And so at that decision point, it senses the water and it kind of makes a decision, for lack of a better term, to move toward the water. And they do this experiment in many interesting ways. There's one where they actually just play the sound of running water and the root actually grows toward that. And so the plants are, while much simpler than human processing, the plants are running through a significant level of processing to perceive its environment through sound, through.
Yeah. It may be
So
different
you
than
don't
human.
forget.
Yeah. Go ahead. Little lag.
I was saying you might. Am I still lagging? I was saying that you may want to pause it here and there so you don't get your stream cut.
Yeah, that'd be fucked up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I noticed it went on a little long there.
Yeah. But yeah, she's referring back to the plants and the kind of intelligence that they display. They're just different. I don't even know if you could say they're human intelligence or consciousness or awareness is more sophisticated or somehow better than plants and other things. That may be a bit anthropomorphic. We may just think
Yeah,
that's more,
it just all has its place in reality. That's how I see it. It all has its, I guess, purposeful functions. It's like a network, of
yeah,
different
exactly.
Functions.
Mm-hmm. And
Kind of like your body, right?
And I may skip around a little bit so we can get through it because this is a pretty long one, and then I want to get to the next one. But this is where she's talking about intuitions too, which I thought would be cool to watch.
Part 2, challenging our intuitions on consciousness. What are intuitions?
So an intuition is simply the strong feeling that something is true, but it may or may not represent something accurate about the world. And we have many intuitions that were sculpted by evolution that are extremely useful. If we're in a dangerous situation, we can notice all kinds of clues unconsciously, that a door was left ajar, that an item is out of place, that someone we're close to who we don't know, if their pupils are dilated, if their skin is flushed. These can be signs that someone is adrenalized and about to act violently. We may not notice any of these elements subconsciously. We just might be left with this intuition that we feel like we're in an unsafe situation or that we shouldn't trust the person who's standing next to us. And those are extremely useful tools that we use all the time. We use them in making decisions. There's studies that show that our gut instincts are often better guides to making decisions about which apartment to move into, which job to take, than deliberate logical reasoning. But also intuitions can fail us, and they also fail us all the time. And so in the sciences, there are many examples of this where there's just no reason for evolution to have sculpted an intuition, again, for being on an earth that is a sphere. It's not relevant to our everyday lives, and we feel like we're on a flat earth, and so that's what our intuition leads us to believe. Einstein's theories of general relativity and special relativity gave us a whole new sense of the structure of the universe, that space-time is a field that can be warped, and that warping is gravity. And so rather than gravity being a force like other forces, what it actually is a warping of space-time. And
Yeah, like the idea that we have absolute free will is very intuitive. The fact that materialism is probably true is very intuitive, but these intuitions can be questioned.
I'm a little bit hung up on how they're using the word, or how she uses the word intuition. Because, how would I put this? Usually, if you're wrong about it, it's not your intuition. It's just your, I guess, an assumption.
Yeah, I think what she's using it as is, like she was talking about the flat earth example. Like,
Yeah, but
a guess, like that's more of a guess.
That's more of a guess. That's because, oh, well, I can't see anything other than flatness, then we must be flat, right?
Right.
That's not necessarily an intuition. And intuition works differently. And I just want to go into that for a second, because I
Yes.
think it's an important point. Intuition is when you have knowledge before any kind of information has actually presented itself, and then that knowledge actually turns out to be right. And there was actually a study done in 2011 that people who use their intuition make significantly better decisions than people who don't. So that's a peer-reviewed study that actually proved that. And so intuition has to be something different, right? It's not just an educated guess based on what you saw. It's deeper than that. It's more accurate.
And it can be
Because
more subconscious.
yeah,
Like,
it's more of a subconscious pattern integration, right? You pick up on patterns.
yes,
Your
you're
your
exactly
body
right.
your body at least, like a somatic, I don't know, like you pick up subconsciously on patterns before your brain catches up with it. And usually those patterns are accurate. Like the information that you intuitively know about it is accurate. It's kind of like, I would compare it to like animal instincts. Like my dog, for example, not this dog, a dog I had like 20 something years ago. He would literally know that someone was about to approach and pass the gate, sometimes up to 10, 15 minutes prior to these people arriving. He would sense it if they were blocks away. And he would start getting real nervous and start pacing around, run into the fence. And we're like, nothing's there. Calm down. Nothing's there. And every single time, 10 minutes passed, and there they are, and we're like, how the hell did he know that soon? So it's kind of like an instinct, and it's accurate.
Yeah, and I think yeah, she is probably conflating inference with intuition. Those are two different things. Because inference is you're using your conscious mind. You're using your conscious observation to come to conclusions. That's an inference. But then you have intuition, which is more underneath, like it's the underneath your consciousness somewhere. And like, I think even she came up with an example. Hopefully she'll come up here with this segment, but she had mentioned like an example of a soldier, like two soldiers were in a Jeep and went into this town, during a war or something like that. And then all of a sudden he said, turn around. And he panicked and said, turn around. The guy was like, I don't see anything. There's nothing here. There's nothing to be scared of. And they ran, and then come to find out there was a big army there ready to corner him, ambush him. And so he was like, how did you know that? There were no visible signs. And the guy said, I don't know. I have no idea. But then when they went back and investigated, they kept going to this same situation, and something about kids. Usually there's kids in the street, but in this particular case, there were no kids out in the street playing. And that sent him a subconscious signal that told him, I don't know why I know this.
Thing was out.
Out, kind of like what you were saying about there's this certain you observe that you're not even aware of that signals you subconsciously, and it signals you to behave a certain way or make a decision. Really interesting shit.
Right.
Maybe
And
go
then,
into this. Yeah.
right. And I think I'm breaking up, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because I used to hear you say use intuition in that way as well. And now I'm hearing her use it in that way. And I don't think that's accurate. So, I mean, I'm not a scholar, but I'm just saying that confuses things a little bit when you use influence interchangeably. Like, what am I trying to say?
Inference.
She's
She's confusing inference with intuition.
right, and using those words like they have the same. Well, she's using the word intuition as if it had the same meaning as inference.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. She's just confusing him. And it's easy to do because that's how language is really weird like that,
Right. And I mean, there is a similarity between the words for sure, right?
Yep.
But again, well, we already went over it. We don't got to keep beating the dead horse.
Yeah. I was just going to write down this because Joe said it's an inference still, even if it's subconscious. You could say it's an unconscious inference equals intuition.
Well, that's why I just said it's very similar, but it's more than just based on what we can consciously observe. Like we said, it's a more subconscious, more subtle thing, and it's usually very, very accurate. Whereas that goes to show that sometimes because you see things with your eyes doesn't mean that you're fully seeing the whole picture or that you're really seeing things as they are, because then you will make mistakes 9 times out of 10.
Right.
So I did.
And another thing worth mentioning is that intuition is something that has to be built up like a muscle, because that's why people have intuitions that turn out to be mistaken. It's because they don't trust their intuition enough to where they've learned how to make it more reliable. Like if you don't exercise it, you're never gonna get good at it. It takes practice. It could be something like that.
Well, I think that it just kind of naturally happens due to environmental factors, possibly. That's why it's been linked to being higher in people who suffered abuse or trauma, because they had to adapt to protect themselves against their environment. So I think that's why people who've been abused and developed things like PTSD, they have more of a intuition, or they're more in tune with their intuition, because a lot of times they don't have the luxury of knowing information beforehand, and they have to constantly brace themselves against danger. And so they develop something, what I would say, similar to an animal instinct, right?
Like a strong heuristic. Yeah, strong heuristic.
Yeah, an animal lives in a much harsher environment than a human because we're shielded from a lot of things. Whereas an animal is out there in the wilderness, and it makes sense that an animal would have instincts like that to protect themselves. Whereas most humans are protected by four walls and whatever else, right? We have the luxury of knowing we're safe. You know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean?
like
So I think that
when you deal either when you deal with computer codes or computers, or you deal with people a lot over the years, you start building an intuition. You start picking up on little things that you're maybe not necessarily conscious of, but you kind of know there's a problem that's going to happen. Like I noticed, like in my own situations, I kind of somehow, and unfortunately, this increases my anxiety. Like I suffer from a lot of anxiety, but I was looking into anxiety last year a lot because I was starting to suffer from a lot of it. And one of the things that really weird is in mystical traditions, like with mystics and shaman and people like that, in early civilizations, people who suffered with anxiety were looked at people who were spiritually gifted, because somehow they were able to foresee things that were going to happen, and then they were able to respond more effectively than people who didn't. So in other words, people who were always anxious and always worried and always waiting for the shoe to drop, those were the people you would think they're the ones that are panicky and weak in some kind of way. But as it turns out, those were the ones that were more prepared to deal with the shit when it hit the fan. The other people were so shocked they didn't see it coming. They're like, oh, wow, I was just too positive about shit. And now they don't know how to mount a defense. But the people who were anxious and the people who had suffered from a lot of anxiety and suspicion in their life, they're always ready to deal with the shit because I knew it was going to happen. So I already planned for it. Like I'm already ready for this shit. Like it's no surprise, you know? And they were looked at as spiritually gifted, but really it's just their intuition was built, different,
yeah, it's just a different way of evolving, I believe, I would say. And I think it is definitely based on your environmental factors. And in a way, it's like a two-edged sword to have all this comfort and security, because it causes us to use senses that we would normally use way less, which doesn't necessarily make us more powerful beings either, because like you said, the nervous wreck may seem like a nervous wreck and a conspiracy theorist, but that nervous wreck ends up being prepared for certain disasters that blindside the next person, and it's the nervous wreck guy who will actually survive it, right? So it's like, which one is more evolved, or which one has evolved better systems? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep. And it's all based
which
on
one would you
experience.
rather be?
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
based on experience, because experience is fundamental. And then it's like it's kind of like even in relationships. Like I noticed, like at first when I was really a naive person in relationships, I was really happy in the comfort zone when I thought everything was perfect, and I never really picked up on the little signs, the little red flags, and I just brushed them off like, oh, it's nothing. People are imperfect. People are whatever. But then you start picking up on cues out of people. You start seeing little patterns in people's behavior. And sometimes these patterns, you may not even be aware of them, and you're still picking up on it. And you're just wondering, why don't I trust this motherfucker? Why is it that I think he's up or she's up to something, or something's going on behind my back? Like something's telling you something, but you kind of brush it off because you're like, oh, that's just magical thinking or whatever. But actually, it turns out you were right all along. And if you've had enough of that shit happen to you in life, you'll start paying attention to that shit.
You're gonna start
You know?
listening. I
Yeah.
think that's why we do things like a lot of people say, always follow your first mind. How people say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reason we say that because exactly what you just described. Something told you, like this gut feeling, no, don't do this, or no, don't go there, or no, don't deal with this person. But then you just brush it off because you have no objective, proof.
Yeah.
So you just
Right.
brush it off. And then you get fucked up and you're like, God dang it, I did have that feeling and I didn't listen to it. So next time I'm gonna listen to that shit. And that's why people say things like that. Always follow your first mind or always follow your gut. Because
Mhm.
there's a part of us that knows before information actually presents itself to us. And I think we should listen to that. And
That's
we
where you
call that
get
intuition. And yes, it is kind of it is an inference, like Joel said. At the same time, though, it's not the exact same thing, because then there would be no difference between inference and intuition, and there is a difference. So for the
Mhm.
sake of pointing out the difference, I would say we shouldn't use the words interchangeably.
Right, right, exactly. And that's where you get these real smart, dumb motherfuckers. You know, like you have people that are so smart, they're so keen on the facts and what the objective facts about everything. And they base everything on evidence and the facts and what's presented clearly, and not to jump to conclusions and stuff like that, which on the face of it seems like very intelligent and a very intelligent way to be. But on the other hand, you can be ignoring your intuition and you fall for the same shit, all the time because you're
A lot
never
of
paying
times,
attention.
by the time you have those facts, it's too damn late. So
Too
you
late.
can
Yeah.
sit over there and you can sit over there in the corner and wait for your little facts while I listen to my intuition. And you can get mad and say, oh, why do you think you know this? And what do you think you're God? And all this kind of stuff. And I'm going to be like, hey, man, whatever makes you feel better. But I'm doing what I need to do for me. That's my own survival instinct. You understand? And I'm not going to change that for no one and put my ass on the line. If you want to
That's
put your ass
yeah.
on the line and wait until science catches up and gives you all the answers you need, have fun, bro.
Yeah. And because, especially if it works for you, if there's a pattern of following your intuition works and you've practiced it enough, you can't let people just sidetrack you and make you doubt yourself, because then you're going to put yourself in danger, because you're going to give up the thing that's you've relied on, and you don't want to do that, obviously. And it's easy to always
Exactly.
point out imperfection. You can say, yeah, but there were times when intuition has misled you, which is true, but that really depends on how well you've trained your intuition. Like a lot of that, it isn't just black and
My
white.
intuition has never been wrong. I may have made wrong conscious choices, but had I listened to my intuition, a lot of times I would have avoided certain things. So my intuition is never wrong. And I don't care how that sounds, but it isn't. It's never wrong.
Dude, I
Because
agree
my
with you.
intuition suddenly
I, I, I've,
it
I've
suddenly
always,
knows things that I'm go ahead.
yeah, I've always said to myself, damn, and I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. And it's like,
Right.
then why didn't you fucking do something about it? Like, that's why I always kick myself. I'm like, I'm one of those smart, dumb motherfuckers. Like, I'm waiting for the facts to come out on the situation. And it's like, I know better. I'm just waiting for some shit. But deep inside, I'm thinking, but I know this. And it's like, at the end of the day, I'm always like, I knew this shit was going to happen. I saw it coming. Why didn't I
But you still
fucking
did
listen to myself? Yeah, why didn't I listen to I should have listened to myself. How many times have you said that to yourself? I should have listened to myself. That's what we're talking about. Kind of
exactly.
crazy.
And so when it comes to that, yeah, sometimes we have to make decisions really fast. We're in certain positions where we just don't have the luxury. And that's what some people don't understand, because they've been in so much luxury. They feel so safe in their little gated communities and all that kind of shit. They don't understand
Losing
how
a free
they can't really relate to that type of reality that sometimes you just don't have the fucking luxury to have all the facts presented to you first. You know what I mean?
Right. And Dave, I don't know if you're still out there, but me and Dave, we talked quite a bit about free will, and he's kind of like a free will advocate, and I kind of am to a certain point in a non-dualistic kind of way. Like, I believe that there is free will, but there's also not free will in a paraconsistent kind of way. And so me and Dave has been kind of talking about that. And so I thought this would be a good segment to go over. If you're still out there, Dave, hopefully you'll see it. But I think she's got some interesting takes on how you can actually test for free will. So I'll let that one play.
Free will be challenged.
There was a very interesting study done in 2013 in which they put participants in an fMRI machine and showed them a screen and presented two numbers on that screen. And they gave them the option of either adding or subtracting these two numbers. And they were scanning the activity of these participants' brains while they were doing this calculation. And the result of this study was that based on the information from the MRI, the experimenters could tell up to 4 seconds not only when this person was going to make the decision, but whether they decided to add or subtract. So there have been other studies like this that are also interesting, but in my view, these studies aren't actually necessary to prove the point. Based on the neuroscience we currently have, we should expect to get more and more results like this. But even if we didn't, if you pay close attention to your moment-to-moment experience, and you don't have to be a meditator, but watching the mind make a decision, you get the sense viscerally that there's no self or free will making decisions behind the scenes, but that in terms of your conscious experience, a decision really arises. And so you can do the simple exercise. Just give yourself the option of moving your big toe or moving your pointer finger. And, in the next 30 seconds, decide to either move your toe or your pointer finger. And if you kind of rest in your conscious experience, you will notice that that decision simply arises in your conscious awareness. There's no self who's deciding to make the decision.
Is recognizing the illusion of free will beneficial?
So many people find this realization to be quite disconcerting, which is understandable. And I think one way to address that is levels of usefulness. And the vast majority of the time, it is not useful or helpful to realize that there's an illusion of sorts taking place.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, this is the paraconsistent argument for belief too, because one could say, I don't believe in free will, yet in our everyday life, we're always making choices. We're always looking both ways before we cross the street. It's like we have embodied beliefs and then we have intellectual beliefs. And so it creates kind of like a contradiction on the face of it. But in a way, it could be said that even your belief in free will might be determined. Something like that, And yeah,
Right.
she didn't mention rethinking. Yeah, long-term thinking. Yeah, I understand that too. Like there's an argument that they say that free will usually manifests over long times. Like in the moment you make determined responses, reflexes, intuitions, and shit like that. But then in the long run, you can practice more free will through deliberation. What do you think about that, Sophia?
You need to say that again because you broke up slightly. Can you say that last sentence?
Yeah. Like over the long term, when we think through decisions, like say you want to choose between a job you want to start or a career decision or a relationship decision, you can have like a more deliberate approach, and then that gives you more free will in that case. But it looks like Sophia crashed out. But awkward. Here she comes. She's trying to come back in. I'll have to repeat that question to her, most likely. Here she comes. She'll be coming around the corner when she comes. All right, you're back. Can you hear me okay? Hey,
Damn
Sophia,
it.
can you hear me? There's a bit of a lag. But here, I'll play the rest of the video in the meantime.
Shit.
There are places where it's useful. It's
Can you
useful,
hear me now?
obviously, for the sciences
Yeah,
and
maybe
neuroscience,
hold
but
on.
it actually can also be used.
Yeah.
Am I good now?
Kind of a lag though on the video. Maybe take the well, maybe it'll clear up as we go along. But yeah, did you
Is
hear?
it better?
Yeah, it's better.
You were asking me a question and I crashed. You saying that are you saying that intuition is more for short-term decisions, and then you was that, say that again?
Yeah, like an example could be like intuition sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, because I've had intuitions that led me in long-term decisions too. I've noticed, or I thought I've noticed that. But in other words, you don't have free will, or you have less free will, it could be argued, when you make very fast decisions, like she was saying about move your finger or move your toe, right? But then you have other decisions like career decisions, relationships decisions, where you deliberate over time. And maybe in those cases, you exercise a little bit of free will in that sense.
Oh, but I don't understand how it's related to intuition. I mean,
Yeah,
you
forget
could
intuition.
make long-term planning, because you could do long-term planning and still consider intuition, right? Well, what you intuitively know. But as far as free will goes, the way I would say it is that if consciousness expresses itself through physicality, and physicality is an interface, then consciousness makes decisions and has choices, but it's expressed as individual choices. So technically, it's not that you have free will. It's more that you're just an expression of consciousness, and you are the expression of the free will of consciousness. And even consciousness may have limitations, so who knows?
Right. It's kind of like reality or nature is expressed through you, you know?
Right. So you're just an interface.
Right. All right, I'm gonna end this right here. I'm gonna let this play out a little bit, and then I'll go to the next video because it's taking a long time.
Psychologically in certain circumstances. And again, this isn't something you want to remind yourself of in every moment, but there are moments where realizing that there's an experience of conscious will taking place can be quite liberating. And there are a few examples here. So one is, many people get stuck in feeling responsible for their psychological state. And there's a way in which simply being with whatever uncomfortable emotions you're experiencing, whether it's sadness or frustration or anger, and being aware that those processes are playing out and being with them rather than believing that you're controlling them can be extremely beneficial for psychological well-being. There are also ways that we can apply this in our relationships with other people. I sometimes talk about the fact that you would never get angry at a tornado. And that doesn't mean anger doesn't have a place in society and culture, but there are times when anger can overcome us and start to rule our lives in a way that is incredibly unhelpful and unhealthy. And there isn't a solid self to every person that is somehow evil or worthy of blame can also be liberating to notice in certain circumstances.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because the whole basis of judgment, the whole basis of anger at another person when they've done you wrong is the fact that they knew what they were doing, they intentionally did some shit to you. But if we were to take it serious that these people really had no free will and they were just determined to do what they did, then it seems like you're sort of taking that basis away. You're kind of like pulling the carpet from under your feet when you do that, though. And so where does that leave things like justice and accountability?
Well, the way I look at things is you as an individual, you can make good choices or you can make bad choices. And that is within yourself because you have a conscience or you have a lack of a conscience. So even though you can, be good or bad, you're ultimately making a choice. And that choice is directly linked to consciousness if consciousness is, in fact, primary. But again, it may be expressed differently across different interfaces.
Yeah.
In other words, how would I say this? Technically, yeah, we have individuality, right? But it still all happens within consciousness.
Yeah.
When you really
and then,
you break it all the way down. So I would say we have the ability to make choices, obviously, but I guess we could say it's a limited free will, right?
Yeah,
what
man.
would you say?
Yeah, it's one of those things that for me, I look at it because Exit Music kind of said something here is like, I find it weird to talk about consciousness like it's something separate from us. Like I see the us as
It's not, though.
kind of, yeah, it's not exactly. That's what I was going to say is that separateness may be the illusion. Like that's the problem when we start creating this self narrative as if it's you've got the self and then you've got this consciousness thing that's interacting, but maybe you're just the expression of nature. There is no separation. It's just that we talk about it in dualistic terms. And that goes back to what I was talking about, the limitation of language. Our language is very dualistic. And so we talk about consciousness, and then the us, and then these things are like separate and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Also, I think it comes from Abrahamic religions about, teachings about God, that we assume that whatever is primary is perfect. But if we look at it from like the angle of Carl Jung, and consciousness is trying to integrate its own shadow, then consciousness by far would not be perfect. It is an evolutionary process. You could say it has a dark side. You know, it has parts of itself that it doesn't fully understand or know yet. So we see this in the form of people who make bad decisions, who do bad things, who seemingly are evil, you know, and we see the evil in the world. But what if that's just a result of the unconscious parts of consciousness that has not been made conscious to itself? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so the next video, just to kind of move things along, there's this guy Emerson Green, who's a philosopher, and he's a non-physicalist. So we'll let him explain that and see what you guys' thoughts are on that video. So I'll go ahead and get that one going and check that one out.
What is physicalism? What does that mean? Because I think, you know, even if you give a characterization of it's all facts are physical facts, all things are physical things, well, that just leads to my very next question, which is, what is it to be physical? It's actually not that straightforward to give an answer. Anyway, what do you have to say?
I mean, I agree. Lots of people have, you know, inquired about the nature of the physical. Like, Daniel Stoljar has written a lot about how it's hard to find like an essential core of physicalism. Right. Noam Chomsky has written about how it's hard to give like a good conceptual analysis of the physical. I'm not sure that's such a big problem. I mean, physicalism, at least what it says on the brochure, is that consciousness is a purely physical phenomenon. You know, your brain and your mind are one and the same. And physicalists disagree significantly about the details of that, and those details lead to different commitments, and that becomes relevant when we're talking about arguments against physicalism. But I mean, that's basically the idea, is that like consciousness is identical to or constituted by or something the brain, you know, like it's constituted by the brain, it's identical to the brain, something like that. They also usually at least imply that consciousness came late in the history of the universe in biological evolution. So for a physicalist, consciousness is like a higher order phenomenon that's like localized. It's only found in organisms with complex nervous systems. Yeah, it's not something that's just meant to rule out like panpsychism, because Galen Strawson has argued that that's actually a form of physicalism, and he's right about that. But it kind of violates like the spirit of physicalism. Like it doesn't really seem like you're a physicalist anymore if you're saying that, you know, everything is made of consciousness. But you know, technically he is right if you want to go down that path. Like it does seem like a legitimate form of physicalism, panpsychism. But another thing is I use physicalism and materialism interchangeably, which historically was not the case, but most philosophers these days seem to use them interchangeably. But yeah, physicalism and the notion of the physical is famously hard to define. But I think,
yeah, there's a lot of goal shifting with a lot of these terms and stuff that I find. Like a lot of people will say, well, you're not really talking about all physicalists, because some physicalists don't believe this or that or whatever. So it's hard to pin them down on what a person really means. It's the same thing with theism or atheism. Like someone could say, well, atheists believe there is no God. And then some people will say, well, no, atheism isn't saying that there is no God. It's that I don't know if there is a God. Therefore, I don't believe in a God. So there's all kinds of different word usages. So it's really hard to pin a lot of this stuff down. But I think when it comes to physicalists, I think the one common thing they all have is that they say that the physical is fundamental. So a lot of them would say that whether you want to believe that consciousness emerges from the physical or consciousness is the physical, like it's a physical thing or a physical process, is still kind of rooted in the idea that physical is fundamental. That's the whole point, I think.
the position actually comes into greater focus when you're talking about arguments against physicalism, because they don't all respond to like, you know, the conceivability argument the same way.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes helpful to kind of like divide up. Oh, there's type A physicalism and type B physicalism and type C physicalism. Like that, if you just start off with that, it's like, what are you talking about? But if you already know how different people respond to like common non-physicalist arguments, then it becomes more useful.
So we begin with the first argument against physicalism, which is Philip Goff's phenomenal transparency argument. What's this? What's this argument?
I'm like increasingly of the opinion that this is pretty much what it all comes down to. Like if the conceivability argument works, it probably works because Goff is right about phenomenal transparency. But I guess we could start with like a thought experiment to kind of drive the point home. So imagine that we live in a far off possible world where round things and red things are always correlated. And I got this example from Brian Cutter. I like this thought experiment. So it's just a curious fact that like every sphere is red and every red thing is a sphere. There are no blue spheres or like red squares or anything. And it seems, totally self-evident that these are not the same. Like being round is not the same thing as being red. And it's like, it's a really interesting fact that these things seem lawfully correlated, but it just seems obvious that these are not the same thing, right? And someone in that world who has kind of a reductionist mindset and a taste for like desert ontology, they might think like, well, redness just is roundness, or like redness grounds the roundness, or roundness is constituted by redness, or something like that. I don't even know what it means to say there's a blue sphere or something like that. And then if I disputed that, they'd say, oh, what are you using to say there could be a blue sphere? Intuition? It's like, yeah, definitely. What about it? So yeah, I mean, it seems intuitively obvious that these are not the same thing, but you could make conceivability arguments. Like you could run these arguments where it's like, oh, well, I can conceive of a blue sphere, I can conceive of a red square, and that seems to indicate that they're possible, so they can't be identical. But like foundationally, the thing that's driving this is that they just don't seem like the same thing. So this is the position that non-physicalists find themselves in, where you're talking about the brain, you're talking about the things that neuroscientists deal with, those physical properties. Like,
go ahead.
I just said Jesus Lord point at the same shit like 5 times.
Yeah, say that again. You were kind of roboting, chopping up a little bit.
I was saying Jesus Lord, get to the point. He said everything double and triple.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I think the point though is that he's saying that correlation of two different things don't necessarily prove identity theory. Like saying like, because say like consciousness is correlated with the brain, right? But that doesn't mean that consciousness is the brain necessarily. And so the intuitive argument is to separate the two out, to say that the brain isn't the consciousness and the consciousness isn't the brain. These are two different things. Kind of like the idea of the red circle. Like if every circle is red, therefore red is just another word for circle, I think is the argument he's trying to make there.
The rate at which neurons fire in hertz, or the behavior of synapses and acetylcholine and sodium ion channels and things like that. And then it's like, okay, is any of that the feeling of pain? No. Like these like if you picture a physical brain, like holding it in your hands, it's like, this is just a wet glob of tissue. This seems at least conceptually distinct from like a thought or the feeling of pain. If you just tell me like point blank that a thought is a physical object, I'm not really going to know what you're talking about at first, because it seems like all I'm saying, like, don't read too much into this. I'm just saying, prima facie, it seems as if a thought is not a physical object. Okay, and like we can go different directions with that. We can be like Dan Dennett and say, well, you know, when I squint just right, I can kind of see what these non-physicalists are talking about, but I've learned not to credit the hunch. So it's like I think everybody has this intuition. I
Yes.
mean, I think it's just my personal opinion. Everyone has this intuition. Um, but like then they don't trust the intuition. Like he said, I've learned not to credit the hunch. And that's what I did when I was a physicalist. I was like, okay, I can kind of see the hard problem of consciousness, but I've learned not to credit the hunch. I don't trust the intuition. And we don't stop with the intuition, obviously, but you know, I'm just kind of setting the table here. Like initially these don't seem like the same thing. Um, and I think that's significant, but we should just start there that like this seems, you know, physical things and mental things don't initially appear to be the same. They seem to be, you know, distinct, just like red things and round things seem to be distinct. And even if we lived in a world where they happened to be always correlated, it's like, wow, that's a really interesting fact that they seem to be lawfully connected in this way.
Hey, Sophia, someone's at my door. I have to walk off and open my door for somebody. Someone's knocking at my door.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
so I'm gonna
let
play
the
the
dude
video.
keep talking, I guess.
Yep. Hopefully it won't crash the stream.
But that doesn't mean that they're literally the same thing, like identical, or one is constituted by the other or something. So I mean, I guess that brings us to phenomenal transparency. So I think the reason that like the roundness and redness case is compelling is because we kind of have a grip on what roundness is and what redness is. So, you know, also just thinking about the roundness and redness case, if you just switch out redness with the phenomenal appearance of red and roundness with, you know, a particular physical property or object or something, nothing seems to change for me. And like that's what the non-physicalists are saying. It's like, okay, the appearance of red and a particular physical object or process or whatever, again, they just seem like different things. So why is that significant though? I think it's because we understand the nature of, you know, consciousness. I think we know something about consciousness in virtue of being conscious and being able to reflect on it. So if you're trying to make these kinds of conceivability arguments where it's like, well, I can conceive of a body without a mind or a mind without a body, or, you know, I can conceive of a blue sphere or something. What is really relevant, I think, like this is what Goff identified, is that what's really relevant is like whether you understand the essence, whether you grasp the essence of the entities involved. So like if you know what you're talking about, basically, when you say, well, I can conceive of X without Y, it's like, okay, well, let's back up a step. Do you grasp the essence of X and the essence of Y? Do you understand the nature of these things that you're talking about? Because if you don't, then who cares that you can conceive of X without Y or Y without X? It's like if you say, well, you know, I can conceive of X without Y, but I have no earthly idea what X is or what Y is. It's like, okay, well, then who cares? Like, what good is your conceiving? But if you grasp the essence, if you grasp the nature of these things that we're talking about, and you can still make this conceivability move, then it seems like you're on pretty good footing. It seems like if you understand the nature of consciousness and you understand the nature of the physical, then you seem to be in the same position as the person who's making a conceivability argument about red things and round things. So it just comes down to like, do we understand the nature of the physical, you know, through empirical investigation?
All right, I'm back. I'd had to pause it because it wouldn't die on me. So I missed all of that. You know, I didn't really see this whole video. But wow, I just got some really bad news, man. But I'll let you know after this is all done. I don't want to saturate this moment with this news, but I'll let you know what's up, Sophia.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah,
not good.
very crazy, man. Very, very
Do
crazy.
you want to just stop here and
Yeah, I think I probably should stop here because I got a lot to process right now. But I want to talk to you. Let's stay on after I stop this. I'll tell you what's going on. But
okay.
yeah. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, man. It's just some really sad news I just got, man. Something that's really crazy. But All right, guys. Well, hopefully you got something out of the videos and stuff. It was entertaining and educational or whatever. Just a perspective on consciousness and all that kind of stuff. And we'll stop it here though, and we'll pick up again. I'll keep shooting videos out every morning of the week while I can. And we'll keep it going, man. Thank you so much, guys. Please like and subscribe to the channel, though. I appreciate all you guys participating and interacting the way you do. I feel so blessed to have you guys. A lot of you folks have been donating to my causes through the channel and stuff like that to pick the channel up. I got a new computer. It's more stable. All of these kind of things, thanks to you guys that are donating and doing a lot of stuff for me. And I can't even say thank you enough. Right now, I'm just trying to be grateful as I can right this second. But anyways, man, you guys have a great weekend, and we will get up soon. Peace out.